Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. This is Tanner.
This is David.
And Corey's here.
Are you cold?
My lips are turning blue here.
We're not gonna tell people how cold it actually is while we record this.
Did you get a new watch band?
I did. Yeah,
Fancy.
I did.
Oh,
That's how
hey.
popular our
we
guest
should take
is.
that call. The NRCS was calling.
Yeah. I put it on airplane mode. Let's ask him.
Oh, that's funny. Well, listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. We always do. We like your feedback, and we haven't asked for a while, but please go and leave us reviews. 5 stars. I know you got to work at it when you get to Spotify to leave us some comments there and engage. Apple, it's easy. 5 stars. You can tell us whatever you want to once you put those in place. Of course, subscribe on YouTube. That's one of the biggest values that you can bring us, as well as telling your friends and family. I know we haven't asked that of you for a while, so appreciate you joining in. And if this is your first time here, stay a while. There's, 500 and some shows that they can listen to?
Yeah. If you don't like this guest, you can go on to the next one.
Boy.
I mean, it makes like $4.99 and a half, including this one. So
We got 2 halves. We did one with you 2
Well,
years
right,
ago, so now we're back
right.
even again.
Yes.
Yep. We actually met a listener who just started listening to us a couple weeks ago out here at the North American Conservation and Drainage Expo. So that was a lot of fun. Just had lunch with him, learned a lot about his family operation, and it seems like there's so many similarities, no matter where you're at and what you do. If you've got guests or if you yourself want to be on, farmforprofitllc@gmail.com, or send us a text message, 515-207-9640.
Where'd you get a beer?
Up there.
Okay. They need to, chuck them down here.
We should.
he's staying warm.
Warm us from the... we should go get a container of Fireball shots.
I think we just go record up at the bar. I think we could have a pretty good, pretty good old podcast up there.
I think that'd be good. Well, I'm not plugged in to do any music, Corey, but
I know.
how do you feel like you're going to do here on your intro?
I'll do it.
Hey, listeners and friends. Thanks for listening to the Farm for Profit podcast and enjoying our content. But it's time for us to find out more about our audience. If you wouldn't mind heading over to farmforprofit.com at the top of the page and take our survey to give us a little background on who you are and what we can be doing better as far as content goes. Everybody that takes a survey will be entered into the opportunity to win $100. So we look forward to getting your feedback. Again, head over to farmforprofit.com, click that survey link at the top of the website, and we thank you in advance for your feedback.
You ready?
Yeah.
Acapella.
Oh, yeah.
Like Carrie Underwood.
I'll just sing it.
I'll just sing it.
I got this. You guys know it.
You guys know the words.
Yeah.
Just follow along.
Today on the Farm for Fun show, we are back live at the NACADE conference, and we are with a guest that we have had on before at the NACADE conference 2 years ago, almost to the day. This man is a tractor and ag social industry man, taking it by storm with his endless knowledge. I wrote this when we were in the truck.
This is awful
Tanner
slow.
cannot
Yes.
drive. His endless knowledge and his tell it like it is mentality. He's a farmer, a father, a drain tile contractor, trucker, and content creator.
There you
Please
go.
welcome from Wisconsin, Mr. Wisconsin Titan 2, a.k.a. Ryan
Kelly. I'm honored.
I am sorry, I couldn't read my own writing. Tanner was all over the
It was
place.
those Indiana roads. I mean, there's
Illinois, actually.
Oh, yeah, either way.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely full of shit.
Yeah.
I was driving with my knee.
Sometimes I get ahead of myself.
And I don't think most people even needed the introduction, just because the voice resonates and you just know exactly. Like, I scroll TikTok, I'm like, oh, hey, yep, all right, there it is.
Yeah. It's they want me to do voiceover work for romance novels all the time, and I just don't have time. I just can't. So,
Just
I don't know. I think if I ever got asked to do
50
that,
Shades of John Deere Green.
50 Shades of John Deere.
Shades of Alice.
50 Shades of Alice.
Alice Chalmers.
Oh,
How many oranges can you have?
turn her orange, yes.
yeah. Yep.
Anyway, so 2 years ago, we met up with you in Des Moines at the NACADE conference.
Yep.
And you were just kind of getting started on your social media journey.
Yeah.
Telling tractor
only had
stories.
1.5 shoelaces.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, he's got full shoelaces.
Yep,
Are
we
those
do.
the shoelaces I sent you?
No.
No. Did
Those
you break those?
I can wear out a pair of work boots and 6 months.
Yeah, Ryan was there last time, and he literally, he couldn't even tie his boots.
Yeah, they broke, so I just kind of just looped it and sort of made it work.
They daisy chained together, tied
Yeah.
up and all this, and I'm like, Jesus, man, can you not afford a pair
So
of
as,
shoestrings?
as a thank you for
So I
his
sent him
interview.
shoestrings.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I remember right, they might have been colorful too. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And I think I broke those too.
Yeah.
So,
They were cheap Amazon deals, but anyway, yeah, you were just getting started on your journey a couple years ago, and you have come so far now. You're all over the place. So what have you been doing the last 2 years?
well, I guess kind of what I was doing before. It just sort of grew,
Right.
I guess.
That's what they
You
say,
know.
right? Find what works and just stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you've evolved a little bit. You've started talking about some other things. You started a YouTube channel.
We did. That, and the YouTube channel was sort of I guess it's different than the TikTok, because in the TikTok, you get my opinion. That's one thing you're going to get with me is my opinion. The YouTube isn't about me, generally. It's about typically it's an older farmer that I'm interviewing. And we're losing history, so I want to get these stories recorded from these older farmers. So today when an older farmer, say you've got a baby boomer farmer retires, nobody buys his farm and then just starts farming there anymore, right? You're in the land business, the building site's going to go this way, the farm's going to be absorbed by a larger farm. That's the reality of it. And it didn't used to be that way. Typically it was, this guy retired, another person would start farming there, the kid would start farming there, etc. That isn't happening anymore, and we're kind of losing that history and a lot of guys, you hear the young people all the time complain about boomers and everything else, and everybody wants to grow, everybody wants more acres, but a lot of these guys have a story that would you have wanted to farm if it meant what those guys did,
I don't think I could farm the way that some of the guys farm. The dairy, we were talking, you, me, and Mike Burkhart were talking about dairy farmers this morning.
Yeah.
Getting up, milking, and doing that. I'm not going to say I couldn't, but I don't know if I'd want to.
I think it might surprise you. I think you get used to the lifestyle. And I think people farming was a way, literally a way of life. It wasn't a living years ago. It was a way of life. So you immersed yourself in that way of life. You didn't worry about vacations, that kind of stuff. It just didn't happen. You couldn't get away. You had chores. You had stuff to do, and I think people take it for granted. People like time off now.
And I knew you had a fascination with old tractors and stuff, but I didn't know you had a fascination with old people and their stories.
Well, I didn't know you liked old people.
What's the tie? Where's it go together?
Well, I think I'm watching the guys that I looked up to.
Okay.
Get old, and that's history that's disappearing.
They have a story to tell, and a lot of times their story will die with them.
It will.
It's not told.
So what's the hope? Is to educate the younger generation of what stories are, or just preserve the legacy?
I would say probably. Well, everybody should know history. Otherwise, we're
Bound
doomed
to
to
repeat
repeat it. So I think that's intelligent, and I think we can glean a lot of solutions to problems we currently have today looking at the past. We've done this before. We've been through boom times. There's lessons to be learned.
Gotcha.
And it's just neat to preserve this stuff, if nothing else.
When you think about history, you're telling a lot of tractor history and farming history, but really it's the last 100 years, right? Before that, it was horse and plow. It was drastically different.
A little longer, but yeah, for basics, 100 years.
Yeah.
Wasn't it, I guess, was it the 30s that, rubber tires came out over steel.
Yeah, the WC would have came out actually probably late 20s because the first John Deere with rubber tires would have been a B in 1935.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the WC would have been probably a couple years ahead of that. Alice got one thing. They got their rubber tires.
They got
first.
rubber tires.
Way to go, Alice. That's and then it went downhill from there.
Right.
But they peaked early.
Yeah.
That happens to some of us. Or
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Corey.
Right.
I mean, what I was trying to portray though is yes, there's a shit ton of history in this last 150 years, let's say, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small time for how long Earth has been around and all that.
Yeah, if you talk about blacksmithing, that history is much longer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about the advancement in tractors in that short amount of time. What's the next 100 years do? What,
Yeah.
if agriculture has changed that much, I geek out on the new stuff, appreciate the old stuff, but I just soon be riding in the new stuff. What's 100 years from now?
So I consider agriculture like rolling a snowball, right? So we started out with this little tiny snowball, and we rolled it over once. We doubled the size of it, right?
Yeah.
And it's you didn't even notice it doubled. Then you rolled it again. Now, pretty soon, after about 50 years, it got to be this big. At 75 years, it got this big. And now every time we roll it over one more year, the damn thing gets so
Big.
enormous.
Exponential.
Right. That it's the
Compounding
same.
interest.
It's no different than the farmland thing when I hear guys say all the time, well, I mean, I can remember that piece sold for $300 when I was a kid, or whatever. And they go, can you believe it now what it's selling for, say $12,000, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it's well, when it went from 300 to 600, it was the same ratio as going from 5 to 10,000.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
People have a hard time, accepting that. And
My family's history, we have a Century Farm, 1901. That's when we could trace it back to when it stayed in the family, but it actually went back into the 1850s, 1860s. It was just in and out of the family because they were losing it in card games.
I was going to say,
Oh,
you told me that they were a degenerate gambler.
Yeah, degenerate gamblers, drinking, whatever. It was in and out of the family. What's crazy? Can you imagine living in something like that? I lost my farm to Dave last week at the podcast because I bet him something stupid.
Actually, you know what? Dave's got a farm. We should gamble this afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
I'm feeling pretty lucky.
Uh-huh.
I just to think about that, I just want to go back.
Did you ever, in high school, race for pink slips?
No, I've never
Is that
raced
for
pink
pinks?
slips. Yeah.
Pink
with
slips?
my Buick LeSabre?
Yeah. That was
No one wanted that.
We put cars up. We
My
put
Pontiac
cars up,
Grand
but
Am.
not... Yeah.
Yeah.
Grand Am might have wanted that. What do you have for a car?
Oh, in high school?
Yeah.
Multiple. I was...
Oh, yeah, you're one of those guys.
I was hard on vehicles. I mean, I guess the very first
You had
vehicle,
hard on 4 vehicles? Or you were
I was hard on
Okay, so make it-
vehicles. Yeah. I had 83 S10 Blazer Sport was the first one, and that lasted, I don't know, maybe got about 9 months out of that. And I had a 79 Chevy Silverado short box, 4-wheel drive that was lifted. Ran that for a while. Then I had one of those 78 Caprice Classic 2-door hardtop where it had that big giant window that kind of huge
Caprice.
glass
I
in the
looked
back. But it was a 2-door because the 4-door this was normal, but it had this big giant window on the 2 doors. And then after that, 84 Dodge short box 4-wheel drive Power Ram.
You did go through a couple.
Oh yeah.
Did
Oh yeah.
you see a Chevette sold at Mecum the other day for $30,000 or something like that?
Yep.
I got one in
Only-
the trees.
It only had 41 miles.
Oh,
Was it
ours probably doesn't even tell you how many miles it had on it. But
But
we
the-
turned ours into a go-kart. I think I told you guys
Yeah.
that story. You bust all the windows out, weld the doors shut, and then run a pipe out through the back window. And we take that thing just like it was a giant go-kart. Up and down the roads, through the...
Cheaper than a new side-by-side.
Oh, yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's why I got a Chevy Tracker.
Yeah.
I bought that for $4,000 and, better than 30.
Yeah.
And I can go down the interstate, and it's got cruise control, and it's got air conditioning, heat, 4 doors.
Yep.
Now you just need a lift kit.
I did put some mud tires on it, but I didn't lift it.
Yeah.
Every time I've lifted something, it just never drove right.
It gets top. Sometimes it can feel like it's top-heavy a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 79 Chevy with the lift kit, if they tried to give me a speeding ticket, I would have fought it in court and just told the other side, the prosecutor, you take that thing over 55 miles an hour and see if you can.
Right.
Because it does not go there. Yeah.
It had the power to get there, but after...
I want to know if our listeners, when they hear about this, what was the vehicle like during your high school? Because I started off with Dad's '88 F-250 that was pretty much worn out by the time I got it, and you just kind of, I feel like farm kids just kind of get what you can get to start off with. Where, it was more of a strategic plan for my friends in town. They got Dad's pickup, or they had Mom's car, or whatever it was. They had bought 4 years before that just to hand down. They knew it was only going to be driven on pavement, wasn't going to do anything extra.
Well, my friend group, for the most farm, I will say this a lot about the dairy farm kids, and that a lot of times their dad would pay them. They got paid, so it wasn't. A lot of us had we bought our own vehicles. Because we had our own money, and that was...
In your era, was it big motors or car stereos? Because it went from, the engine was the most important thing to then the car stereo was the most important thing to now I don't even know what's the most important thing.
Now, do you think that... Sorry, answer the question first, and then I'll give an opinion.
Well, I don't know. Guys had good stereos, a lot of loud exhaust. Everybody had to put dual exhaust and cherry bombs and headers.
Cherry bombs,
and, a lot of that. I was just talking with Nick McCormick yesterday about this. We were talking about, for whatever reason, we got talking about cars, and we were talking about the fastest production car in 1987 was a Buick GNX. It's faster than Lamborghini, Ferrari, all that stuff, right? And that G-body, that's what the GM was. The G-body was the Grand Prix, the Regal, et cetera. In the class of 90, I graduated in 96. The class of 94, at least a third of those guys drove either it was a Cutlass Supreme, a Regal, a Grand Prix, or Monte Carlo. That's just
no Mustangs.
There were.
And Monte Carlo was a big boat of a car too.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. A buddy of mine had an '83 Monte Carlo that he got. It was probably 11 years old. We probably got our driver's license in '94, and this had been like a little old lady's prized Monte Carlo, and it was beautiful. He got first a couple of big Chevrolet stickers go in the back window, and then before you know it, he kind of does this and does that, and then everybody's putting dual exhaust on it. This thing's got a 2.8 V6, so he puts dual exhaust on a 2.8 V6 with no cherry bombs, just straight pipes. And he got pulled over one night, and the cop pulled him over, and he's like, "You know why I'm pulling you over?" And he's like, "Well, what? Was my exhaust too loud?" And he goes, "I don't care that it's loud if it sounds good. But this sounds so terrible." And he goes, "I'm giving you a ticket because it sounds bad." So
I agree with that. I don't mind loud, but it does sound like something.
What I was going to say to your question about was it motors to exhaust to radios, it's probably just what those generations could work on. Maybe we got further away from the mechanical abilities as we got into that, but we knew enough about wiring and sound systems and put subwoofers in the back trunk and, could do those things ourselves. And that might have been a connection to your parent of they didn't know, so they couldn't help you out.
Everybody had to have subs, and you had different amps, and man, you'd put lights behind it. And then I remember there was car kits for every model of car, because when that Pioneer flip face, or you could take the face off so nobody could steal your stereo, oh my. And when that was going in, everybody replaced the car stereo for a 10-year stretch there. And then all of a sudden we got these big screens. Now nobody has anything but a factory stereo. I haven't seen anybody without a factory stereo.
Now you've got Bose systems
Infinity
systems,
B&O, and all of those. But that was like a whole genre.
Yeah, well, and back in the day with the older square body Chevy pickups, a lot of us had them, and something happens to the engine, and a group of us would, after chores, hang out at one of our buddies' house and drink a few beers, and before we had it fixed. They weren't that complicated, and and if they were bad, it didn't. You could always find another one in the weeds. When I went full-time farming when I was 24, I was milking cows. I had no money. Milk is in the toilet. I had this 78 Chevy pickup that was my main vehicle. I mean, I was dirt poor, but I owned my own farm. And that winter of 03 into 04, that fall, it threw I blew a head gasket is what it was in the old 350, you know. So a buddy of mine pulled it home for me, pulled it in. I swapped the head gaskets out on it. It ran for about another month, and then it put a rod out the side. I called a buddy of mine that had a mud truck, and I was like, what happened to the engine you took out of that mud truck? And he goes, wonder what's in here. You want to sell it? Yeah, give me $100 for it. And I go to pick it up, and it's stuck. It was just stuck from sitting, you know. So I brought it home, and then after chores, I get done with milking at night and, you know, sprayed more penetrating oil down the cylinders every night for a week. And then finally I busted it loose. You know, a few hours later, swapped it out, ran that engine. Then the transmission went out, and I called him up. And I'm like, what happened to the transmission that was in that truck? He goes, yeah, sure, $50. So I swapped that out.
He knows that he had you that time. It was $100 for the motor, but $250 for the transmission.
No, 50. 50 for the transmission.
50, yeah.
Oh, I thought he was taking you for a ride on
No.
Body rusts out 2 years later. So.
What'd you do with that old bed you had on that truck?
Yeah.
Now you can't buy one rusted out for $10,000.
No, they're all over Facebook, and Square Bodies are like, there's whole groups of like people that didn't have money back in the day, but by God, they're old enough now, and now they have the money, and now they're just crazy money.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about those new Ford pickups that have the old paint scheme
With the one stripe
yeah,
through
the
it?
red or the blue with the white?
Yeah, they're all right. What's actually really cool on the Ford side is some of those guys are actually like taking a new Super Duty and they're putting have you seen the freewheeling Ford, the 1970s freewheeling Fords?
No.
Oh, beautiful paint schemes. They were, you know, multicolor stripes all the way through. Freewheeling Fords. Look at that. They're doing those on like a new Super Duty.
Really?
That is pretty. That really is good look.
You finding it?
Oh, that's the yeah, you'll recognize the paint scheme if I can get this big enough for you.
Oh, yeah. I remember that kind of look.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, they had like aluminum slot wheels stuff on them.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the brown. So for the listeners that can't see it, it's the yellow, orange, red, brown, black. It's kind of what the stripes were going across them.
Yep.
It's almost like the John Deere snowmobile
Yeah.
Yeah.
logo
Yep.
that everyone thinks is a rainbow now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, that was before that movement.
Pantone array.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, though, thinking about pickups like in the 80s as a kid and in the 90s. Like, somebody drove a pickup like a long time. Like, you knew who somebody was from their pickup.
It was
You know,
their identity, yeah.
like, so I did an interview with a guy that was a neighbor. He graduated in 1979, so he was one of those guys that I kind of looked up to growing up. You know, he was, you know, he'd been 17 years older than me, so he looked like a young go-getter farmer compared to my dad was always old, right? Mm-hmm. Your father is always old.
Yeah.
And he had a 79 Ford F-150 that was an XLT Lariat. So you didn't see an XLT Lariat back in 79. And it was the two-tone brown and had the Lariat interior. And, I mean, I still remember that. I brought that up, and he's like, yeah, I remember that truck. And he's like, oh, I wish I would have kept that. And it was a dairy farm truck. I mean, at one point, like, oh, I got to take a round bale to these cattle, set it in the back of the pickup, and just drive off with it out on, you know, secured. But
Rachel's got a sweater like that, two-tone brown.
Yes. It looks great on her, too.
yeah.
I wish the camera was turned around to see that reaction.
I think everyone said back then, all those vehicles of that era, like, I wish I kept that. My dad had a Chevelle,
Sure.
and, you know, just wish I kept that. But are we ever going to see that again? I don't think anyone's going to say that about a vehicle or a tractor of this era, unless they go buy a Ferrari or.
Yeah, but if you pay attention to the collector car market, so there's some really expensive Corvettes, right?
Yep.
But there are some cheap
yeah.
Corvettes that nobody cares about now. So if you look in the collector car market, it generally isn't necessarily like the sporty stuff. Like a Nova SS today is worth a lot of money because nobody saved a Nova SS. Like they just beat the hell out of it in a way. That's why Mopar stuff is so expensive, is because, I mean, they got just beat and destroyed and thrown away.
Right.
Where, Corvettes, or like Dodge Vipers. Like if you want a low mild first generation Dodge Viper, like it's not that big of a deal. Like there's a ton of people bought them and like, oh, I'm gonna keep this one.
Yeah, they kept it as a collector item right away.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with like when they brought the Challenger back out, the SRT Challenger, and like if you want to find a nice Hellcat, yeah, like there's.
Yeah, like we've got a guy that works for my in-laws that has a Dale Earnhardt Monte Carlo.
Yep.
And it's probably got less than 8,000 miles on it, because that's what he bought it, got it. He was gonna drive it to Talladega every once in a while, and then quit racing. He doesn't agree with racing anymore, and whatever it is. So, sure, you'll be able to find that, and it's not going to be expensive when it gets sold.
Yep.
That's the car I wanted in high school. Dodge Viper RT10.
Yeah.
That was yeah.
What about tractors though?
Well, I was gonna, before we move on to that, like your truck comment. My dad had that blue F-250 that I got, and then he bought a 2000 V10 F-250 red. It's still on the farm. It's still the farm truck.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's had an F-150 that is his daily driver, but he's owned 3 trucks since I've been alive.
Yeah, and now, like I remember in 1988 when Chevy switched from the square body to they call it the OBS now or whatever they call it. I knew everybody in the area that had one of those because you could count them on about one hand. You know what I mean? Like if somebody did buy a new truck, it's like, whoa, that's kind of a big deal to buy a new pickup. And now it seems like whenever the body style changes, like you're like, what happened to the old body style?
Yeah.
Right.
Like everybody's got
newer style.
the new one, and there was more personality in the trucks back then because they would, like on Ford, or Chevy, they would make changes to the grill, they would make changes to this, changes to that, and they had unique paint schemes. Like I looked up one day for a video, like I can't remember I'm paraphrasing the numbers, but like on the new Fords, there's like 7 colors or something, or 8 colors. I looked up like the color scheme patterns for, the 1979 Ford, and it was like, columns of colors, and then it's
emerald green and forest green.
Yeah, and then you'd have
green,
different combinations for your two-tone. So you theoretically you could have had 100 different unique paint schemes, and now it's just kind of random, run-of-the-mill.
But now going to your question about tractors.
Yeah, so what about tractors? The collectability. Is anyone going to collect any of these newer tractors, or when was the last collectible tractor made?
Well, I think they will. People collect 80s cars. Look how terrible 80s cars were. Like, they really sucked. Look at old computers and, gaming consoles. People are collecting that stuff, so...
A lot of people collected Beanie Babies, too, and they ain't worth shit.
It's a good point.
I just don't see people, he did some plastic work on the hood and, frickin' redid the DEF system. And
everybody took their game of what they should collect. I've sold so many precious moments. Are like, we have the entire set. Hey, that's great. They're not worth anything.
Yeah.
But they thought it was going to be big.
But those
at one
were
time.
sold as a collector item.
Correct.
You were duped because there was no internet to tell you that these aren't worth shit.
Correct.
These came from China or whatever.
But I would argue that if you think about things get collected, it's just generational. Now the guys that are 50 to 70, they've got their nut made, their income is stable, they maybe have excess income. Now they're collecting things that they had from their childhood.
Yeah. Well, that's why the spur bodies are.
So are your kids, my kids, Dave's kids, are they going to want a John Deere 8RX 410 in their collection 40 years from now because it was the first baby quad?
Well, it's when you ask people, like, what's your favorite tractor? Nobody says, like, whatever, 6130. They just don't say that. They say a 4440, et cetera, et cetera. They go back to, like, 40 series or older. That's probably the last time I think that somebody calls it a collector.
I say that 84, like, if you're talking John Deere, I think your 8400s.
Oh, absolutely, a collector.
Does it have to be functionally obsolescent to be a collector?
No, not at all.
Just has to have some nostalgia.
Even 30 series Deeres, as in the 8430, 8530.
So that's what I was going to... Like, I have an 8225R, and I specifically wanted an 8225R because that is the very end of the Tier 3 emissions. Oh. So it's 8225R is basically an 8130 with the R-Series cab. So that is the final Tier 3. There's no DPF, no DEF. And I was like, and they only made them for a short time. They were, because at first glance you look at them, you think it's 30 series, and then you look at the cab, and you're like, wait a minute, that's the R Series cab, and it was just that transition period where they were going to that. Because like on the four-wheel drives, they made the 30 series till, was it 2012 or?
I was gonna say 09 or 10, but maybe I'm a little.
I think it went
off there.
It went further,
Right.
And like the 7Rs, so they made a 76 30, 79 30. They were still making those at the same time they were doing the new 8R series.
Right.
So I always figured that would kind of be a unique tractor. And
Do people even collect red stuff?
the Magnums.
Great question.
Magnum.
The boxcar Magnums are
Okay, and that would make sense.
beloved.
But you don't hear about anything since then. Like it's
Like 1056 or something.
that's before.
Yeah.
Yep. I would say the tier 3.
What are those MXs? What
So they had the MX 275 or whatever that was made one year, and that became the Magnum 275. That era, so it'd be like what 2010 and older. So in whenever they start putting, because Case IH went to DEF before Deere.
Okay.
Deere did the DPF thing, and I don't know if they're collectible so much as they're just sought after because they're lower maintenance,
reliable. Maybe more reliable. Yeah.
Right. And let's face it, comfort-wise, like if you bought a new 8300 today, like it'd be just as comfortable to sit. You could sit in a new 8300 today just as well as you could sit in a new 8R, right?
Right.
But
maybe wouldn't have the active seat or whatever. But
Right.
For the most part,
yeah.
very comfortable.
So
You'd still be in a power shift. You'd still be
it's kind of like with new vehicles. I mean, a new pickup today, if you could buy a brand new 20-year-old pickup, are you really that much further ahead? Well, the touch screen's bigger on the new one.
Yep.
I don't know. But I guess it'll depend a lot on what happens with farming going forward. I mean, we're losing farmers rapidly.
You know how some guys have, like, the old guys don't want to show they had money, so they upgrade their truck, but they're like, I need a white four-door. It's got to look exactly the same as the old white
Yeah.
four-door. And then nobody really knows it was the next year's model, but by God, we upgraded so that nobody's on the waves of the wiser. Does that happen with tractors?
That's a good point.
Do they upgrade, like, ooh, I want a green one, right, so that everyone knew it's the same green one, I mean, do they buy the same series? Like, oh, I can't upgrade
Right,
to the
I'm
92. I got to be an 80 because everybody knows I have an 80 or something.
I had an 8335 RT, and now I need to get an RT 83.
45. Or,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone
Does that happen? Does that happen in tractors?
I don't trade tractors enough to think about that, I guess.
Or trucks.
Farmers, you do it all. So should your technology. Level up your equipment with the latest innovations from Ag Leader.
From sure force downforce control and sure speed high accuracy planting to right spot individual nozzle control, Ag Leader has you covered.
And now, with the new In Command Go displays, you get unparalleled visibility and control, keeping critical information at your fingertips. Upgrade today and reap the benefits this season.
Visit agleader.com or contact your local Ag Leader dealer to get started.
Well, I
It
think
happens in trucks, I guarantee it.
yeah. Well, I think on tractors that you got the guys that just roll them because that's what they do. That's what they've always done.
Yeah.
So I do feel like on these newer tractors, what you're not gonna see, like you used to, was like Grandpa bought this tractor and then kept it his entire lifetime. Generally, the first guy buying it now probably isn't planning on holding
keeping
on
it,
to
no.
it
I
would
for
agree.
life.
Yeah.
That's a good statement. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you ordered your 4440,
Yep.
you probably planned on keeping it for a
Yep.
while.
A lot of guys already have the deal made for the next one.
Right.
If they're rolling it the next year or X
Yeah.
amount of hours, cost, all that kind of stuff.
I do think that day of reckoning is kind of coming. I think we're accumulating a lot of inventory, and I mean, I think they're learning some lessons right now that the secondary market isn't necessarily there for some of this stuff the way they
it's
think.
way down.
Is it the planned obsolescence? Because if you think about it, we've still got our 4000, we still have our 4240. And they'll run as long as we want to keep putting parts into them.
Right.
Like, is there a point with some of this newer equipment to where it chip related, electronics related, you just can't?
Maybe, because let's just say you want to go bed cattle. So if you have to buy a tractor to bed cattle, well, you'd probably take that 4240, wouldn't you? Because you could buy it for...
Maybe I'd want something with front wheel assist, but still.
Yeah, I mean...
If I'm just going to put it on a feed wagon and I got it around the feed yard, absolutely. It's going to start up. It's going to run. It's got a quad range in it.
And the depreciation on a new tractor that size is the purchase price. 1 year's depreciation is the purchase price of the old 4240. So, yeah, I think that's why those tractors, why the old 4240 still brings what it sold for new or beyond.
Yep. Actually, my dad and I had that conversation.
Why do we always call it front-wheel assist and not four-wheel drive?
Oh.
Four-wheel drive, everybody considers articulate or rigid frame, but I think the difference with the four-wheel drive is you don't turn it off.
Oh.
Front-wheel assist, so
true.
I've argued with people about the front, because we've always called it front-wheel assist in our area, but technically it's mechanical front-wheel drive, where they said the front-wheel assist was the hydraulic front.
Yeah, the initial, the 4440Hs or whatever they were in the Deere.
And people that argue with you about that are just generally unhappy, angry people, and you just, so whatever.
Seems to be a lot of those lately.
But in a car, right, you got four-wheel drive pickups and you've got all-wheel drive cars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All-wheel drive is all the time.
Correct.
Right.
Versus four-wheel drive you can turn on.
But look at those old full-time four-wheel drive square-body Chevys, bringing it back there. Nobody called that an all-wheel drive pickup. You said it was four-wheel drive, even though it was, full-time.
Marketing. Who knows?
Yeah.
This is a listen all the time podcast. We should start advertising it like that. Not just to listen when you want to.
Yeah.
To listen all the time.
Just
podcast.
listen all the time.
So you've said a couple things about losing farms, depreciation, a day of reckoning coming. I mean, there's kind of a theme here. We were talking before we got on the show.
Yep.
What do you think's coming with this large machinery, and we're losing farmers and all that kind of stuff?
I don't think it can continue on the way it's going. I think because eventually you're going to have, the trajectory we're on, we'll have one farmer.
Right.
I mean, that's the method we're going to, and it just doesn't make sense. And if you look at the backlash from the public, obviously we have a general public that's removed from the farm a long time. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily love big agriculture. There's a lot of backlash against that, and I think things might have to change a little bit that way. I think there's some opportunity coming. I mean, what was that, 2018, 2019, when there was that big fire down in Kansas at that one of the Packers.
The cattle plant?
Yep. And they said, oh, my gosh, we're never going to be able to process all these cattle. So, the box beef went up, live cattle tanked, and then a quarter later they find out that the slaughter capacity was increased at other plants to more than offset it. So the Packers made record margins, and that got the government involved, where they started. So, there's two of the local locker plants that have been around since I was as long as I can remember, right? They built new big facilities, and I'd be willing to bet the majority of local people will source their meat from somebody, a local farmer now through one of these lockers, as opposed to just buying it. Maybe not all their meat, but they're definitely getting.
We just talked about that. Was that me and you or me and you?
Do you think there's some more conversations?
Everybody's doing.
We had Amy on, Amy Hay with Sell Beef, Sell Beef Direct. Just there's a lot of consumer-driven buying directions.
GLC beef. We got our friends at Barn Talk that's doing their thing.
I agree.
There was the VRBO type.
The conception that you are controlling the price when you go that direction is probably more powerful, or just as powerful as knowing where it came from. Because I think there's a lot of price sensitivity. I just saw a TikTok this morning that said if eggs go any higher in price, well, I bet you we end up with a bunch of backyard chicken flocks again.
Right.
And I bet you we end up,
Already
because
got, got that going on.
Yeah, we
it's
do.
ebbs and flows. It's just because of the cost. I mean, that's ultimately what's going to have to drive a consumer to make a decision is how much it hurts their wallet.
Yeah, and I think so. Consolidation has. I mean, we obviously have cheap food prices in this country per capita, right?
Yep.
That's because of farm consolidation and and big agriculture, right? But then it gets to a point where it almost gets monopolized, and then it's no longer, cheaper that route. I mean, then you have a monopoly and you've almost got control, and I think we're seeing backlash against that.
So Natalie Kovarik of Discover Ag, Rachel's girl crush, she had a great tweet the other day about eggs, right? People, like consumers, literally complaining about the price of eggs, but in the same breath, all over social media, we need organic, we need free range, we need better quality food. Like, so they literally can't be happy, right?
Well, you want it all and cheap.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
You can't have both.
I think part of the change coming that we need is the rise of co-ops. Now, I'm not saying the current co-op system we got, because here's the current co-op system. So let's just say, Corey, you farm 200 acres.
Yep.
Dave, you farm 5,000 acres. Tanner, you farm 800 acres, right? And you go to the local co-op and get your seed.
Yep.
So, Corey, you're going to pay the same price per bag or unit of seed as Dave is, right?
Yep.
No, you're not.
No.
Not even close.
No.
But if you're a co-op, that was the whole mentality of the co-op was,
When they were formed.
right, was, okay, so theoretically you guys should all
Be the
pay
same.
the same price, and we don't, because these co-ops are no longer co-ops. They're thinly veiled corporations that needs to go away. And I think as far as like marketing, so you look at some of these big food companies, I won't name any so we don't end up in a lawsuit, but that fall under a co-op type banner. You've got, these different sized farms that operate completely different from one another in different geographical locations. Well, there's no value in that marketing then, where to the consumer, if you say, okay, so these guys, let's just say it's hogs. These guys all farrow, 200 sow herds or less, that they allow pigs to do this, they allow pigs to do that, they won't promise not to do this, etc. if you buy from this co-op. And I think that model could work, because you could still get some volume, you could still do that, but co-ops have gotten so big that there's just it's not helping the members anymore to be a co-op. In the dairy industry, some of these co-ops in a way are harder to sell the milk to, because they don't have to pay federal minimum prices, even because they're a co-op.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we need to overhaul the co-op system. And
Because what's it going to take to put the control back into the farmer's hands? Like, I feel like right now, besides having acres, that's the only bargaining power you have outside of taking your business somewhere else.
yeah,
Those are the two pieces of, and I would argue that in today's world, taking your business somewhere else really isn't that big of a loss for some of these vendors.
right. I think farmers need to get better at math, for one thing. I mean, it's easy to take a spreadsheet and go, okay, so we need this many acres now to buy this new combine.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you were a banker. You know exactly. It's like, so if let's just say Corey comes to you, he's running 1,000 acres and they own 750 of it free and clear, right? And he's renting another 250 from his grandma.
Yep.
For 60% of going market
Correct.
rent.
Yep.
And now Dave's got 4,000 acres, and he started within the last 5 years. So the only way he got that ground was to put the ads in the newspaper.
Top bids out.
Yep. So both of them come to you and they say, we want to buy a new combine. Now, Dave has to have a new combine because he's got so many acres to run across. Mm-hmm. But whose cash flow between the two are
Right. Absolutely.
better. So too many guys are hinging everything upon, acres, and you should never, glean profit from profitable acres or any other profit center you have just in order to sustain X amount of acres. And I think until farmers learn that math, or maybe get their wings clipped a little bit. I mean, hard times aren't all bad. Hard times bring opportunity.
Yeah, I've been saying that.
Corey has been. It's kind of been his theme.
It's like, yes, it sucks, but shouldn't we be excited a little bit because we've been trying to be better? Like, this is when the people that haven't been paying attention are going to struggle, and we should be able to find opportunities.
We should have the competitive edge.
Right?
So a young guy starting out, like when crop prices tank, that's when you get in. Because this, neglected, poor piece of rented ground that when, corn is $6, everybody wanted. Now everybody's like, I won't touch that
That's
with a 10-foot pole.
That's the first piece I'm getting rid of. Yep.
Here's your chance. This is your opportunity to get in there, and I think we need some of that, but I think the consumer mentality thing and some of the changes, and let's face it, COVID changed everything. Mm-hmm. Because everybody can't believe these beef prices, right? Like, cattle prices are record levels, and they've been in record levels for a long time, right? So it's like, well, this isn't sustainable because the economy isn't that strong, so there's no way it's going to work. And yet every quarter we keep finding out that it's there. And it used to be, they said, well, beef price was dependent on restaurant demand, right? Mm-hmm. Because people go out to eat, they order a steak.
Yeah.
COVID made everybody stay home. And what they found out when they stayed home is that cooking isn't that hard, or they kind of enjoy it. And they could stay home and eat steak for less money than they can go out to a restaurant and buy chicken.
That's a good point, because up until the last couple of weeks, I can't remember the last time I ordered a steak at a restaurant, but I can tell you the number of times we've eaten steak in 25.
Yeah.
From home or from whatever it was. And, yeah, I go to the restaurant and I'm looking for one of the cheaper things.
Yeah,
I'm going to get pork tenderloin.
I only order steak if Tanner's paying. But because I got beef in the freezer at home.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can't believe how high beef has been for so long. But then, like, pork, it's finally starting to come along. Chicken, proteins they haven't really mirrored it all that much. It's kind of crazy.
But beef is the Louis Vuitton of meats.
It is.
Yeah. It's always been the top.
Yeah, but this big of a spread, that's crazy.
Well, and maybe there needs to be more chicken and pork. So let's face it, beef is one of the only livestock entities left where there's still probably the majority of beef is independent.
Yeah, not so vertically integrated.
Right. And it's really hard to do with beef. It's very hard to do. But pork and poultry has all been super consolidated.
Yep.
And let's face it, if you don't like the taste of pork, there isn't a lot of
choice.
Right. Because when you've got literally, this company owns 30% market share of all pork production, and they feed them all the same way.
Yep.
Don't kid, like, people that don't know, if you're not familiar with it, not all meat tastes the same, and it's very dependent on what they eat. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeding them all this same thing, and I think consumers want that, some different, maybe we go back to raising pigs a little bit differently, or chickens a little bit differently.
Pork went the way of McDonald's, right? When you ordered a #1 Big Mac in Maine,
right,
and then you went to
be
California, it'd be the same. And then they wanted every pork chop to be
the same.
The same. And
every rack of ribs,
Yep.
Well, look at in the 90s pork. If it was a colored animal.
I'm glad you said pork and didn't use another letter.
Yeah. Yeah. It was nothing but white pigs. That was it. And fat was bad, which fat is taste. You know, like
Yeah.
I think it's coming around. I mean, same with like butter. Look at now, people eat butter. They can't get enough butter now.
Yeah.
Where
Rachel puts beef tallow on her face.
She does.
Just to preserve that youthful look.
What they call it?
It's a sealant or a locker.
Slugging.
Slugging. That's what
Slugging.
it was.
We're learning all sorts of things here at the Naked Expo.
Yeah, we haven't learned anything about drainage.
She's
but,
got a girl crush.
Gosh.
So you obviously were a part of the first Naked because of your involvement in
Tiling.
You install tile.
yes,
Still do it?
yeah, oh yeah,
Putting as much in as you were?
yeah. It's pretty much always about the same.
And it's all yours, or are you putting for other people?
I put in for other people.
Got it.
Too. Yeah, and myself.
So a lot of inflation going on to where everybody's charging more. Has the tile world gone up in charging?
Not like we should.
I was curious.
Fuel
I try-
surcharges?
I tried to up a couple of my rates this year, and my wife was like, we can't do that, we can't do that. And I'm like, why not? Everybody else is charging us more.
It's because it's agriculture, and because I'm a farmer, and you're doing business with other farmers. You get a couple farmers doing business with each other. They'll sit down, and they know they need to make a deal between them. But they'll spend, 2 hours
Talking about
talking
something
about
else?
the weather, talking about everything else. Yes, because and it's that same way. It's like, because when you've been trained to receive whatever the market's willing to give you, the thought of being in control and billing stuff out, you're like, well, this is foreign to me. You know, you
That's
just
a good point.
Like, I know I'm making my money, and I don't need to charge extra for this.
Yeah.
And I know that he just had it, he can sell crops at $4.
I hate to be greedy, right? Like that's the mentality where in any other industry they're like, so there's only
Oh, yeah.
one.
If Dave can charge 4% and he knows he only needs 1% to break even, he's going to charge 4%.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's actually this small amount of tile contractors out there that kind of has a captive market to a certain extent, and yet everybody kind of keeps their rates where they should be. Where if you were the only plumber in that town, you'd be like, just
See, now real
Put
estate,
it to 'em,
you can't do
right?
that. It's called price fixing. So we can't all get together and say, hey, you charge 7%, you charge 7%,
Yeah.
you charge 7%. That's legal. We can't talk commission anywhere.
okay.
That's why people get so pissed off at seed companies. It's like, we don't care that the corn market and soybean markets are down. We got technology. It goes up every year. God, you have no feel.
Emotion.
You don't
Yeah.
care about your
Yeah,
customer.
they're literally raising a commodity. They're selling a commodity that raises a commodity,
Yeah.
and yet they completely throw
Sure.
that market. Just
Yep.
Crazy.
So
So what's next on your winter? Are you traveling around to trade shows, or you got anything planned?
I don't know. Well, we got a lot of projects that need to get done around the farm. There's plenty of fixing, and
Did
know.
you get nervous when TikTok got shut down?
I don't know if nervous is necessarily the right word, but I have to laugh. Honestly, TikTok has been a real blessing for me. It has opened up doors that I never really. It sounds corny to say, but it has opened up so many doors for me to do stuff that I really dreamed. Like, so I'm writing. I'm actually have a writing gig.
Yeah,
now.
for
Heritage Iron.
Yeah.
Like that opened that door up, and that's beyond cool. So financially, we do get paid off of TikTok.
Yeah.
I do, but I mean the money from TikTok isn't necessarily that big, but it's led to these opportunities, and it grew the YouTube stuff, which is kind of a passion project, and that. I've had people make smart ass comments, like, oh, what, making another video, and kind of chuckle or whatever. And that's like, well, I mean, it's genuinely been great. I've made some great friends that, so yeah, it would be terrible to see that just go away. And on the other social media platforms, I don't think there's quite the agricultural community that there is with Farm Talk. Like I had to have an Instagram for a while.
Yep.
I hated it. I thought Instagram was just a waste of time.
Yep.
And even Facebook, it's just not.
Yeah, I don't feel the community on either of those. Maybe grain market discussion, the hate.
Yeah.
That page. Twitter's probably the only other one that ever did have a community like TikTok, but I don't think it ever made it to the. They used to have tweet ups.
Sure.
Right before TikTok, like that guy actually used to come to a show like this, and 30 people from Twitter would actually meet up and have a beer or whatever, But it's not like that anymore. It's just gotten to the point of just complaining about influencers and things of that nature.
So it would have really sucked to see it go away, but I was fine before it.
Yeah.
We'd be fine after it, but
I do think it's funny. I just reflect on the short time ago and the reactions that I had personally. Like I didn't get too bent out of shape out of it, but I almost went and got a new phone because I was believing the rumors that if I had the app already on my phone, it was going to still work. But if I upgraded phones and had to go re-download it, it wasn't going to work, which made me reflect clear back to when COVID happened. And you're thinking about how much you washed your food and what you did to the grocery sacks that came into the house. You didn't let the germ. You go back into these weird times and you go, why the hell did I do that?
You're so dumb.
Right. You're obviously retrospect. Hindsight's 2020. But even then, I let my mind wander with, crap, should I go upgrade my phone? Didn't do anything, didn't take any action, but still seems silly. When we know there's all kinds of people out there that were making end-of-the-world TikToks and revealing secrets and, wondering what the heck the future of their livelihood was going to be and really freaking out.
Well, and it is life-changing money to a lot of people. It was never life-changing for me, but I will say I never thought between social media, between all the stuff we do, would actually become a significant income stream.
Right.
Like it's not like that'd pay the mortgage.
So you used to truck. Do you still truck?
I will a little bit in the wintertime.
But is that less now because you have another income stream?
Yeah, it's been since before, even before social media. It was after our twins were born.
Dwindling.
That was, the tiling grew. It just, if I'd quit, I always say if I quit spending money, then I wouldn't have to do some of the other stuff. But
yeah, it's hard to do though.
You buy another farm, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a big commitment. So then you keep working, but the trucking thing has been significantly less for the last 5 years for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, it's pretty cool that social media, you probably get to stay home a lot more.
Oh, absolutely.
Be with your family and do other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's like I said, it's not life-changing money, but it's like, boy, we made enough to make the mortgage payment.
Yep.
Like,
right.
Heck yeah.
You just take it one bill at a time, and if it can help with that, obviously, who's going to turn down that opportunity?
Well, and it's diversifying the farm. And so we make money tiling, and the tile business is tied into the farm. I use the same semi. I use a lot of the same equipment, right? So you think, oh, that's integrated. That works really good. But then I look at the overhead investment that I have into drain tiling versus I've got my phone to do, the social media stuff. Boy, that's a pretty good return on investment from that versus it's enjoyable. Like I genuinely have a passion for agriculture, and I think most people, whether they get along with me or not, are like they can sense that from my content.
I would agree. What's been your favorite tractor story that you've been telling?
Oh gosh, boy, there's been a lot of them.
You've interviewed John Kinzenbaugh.
Yeah, Zach Johnson's dad.
Yeah, there's been a lot. So do you have a favorite?
I don't know if I've got a favorite. The one I did with my dad was good because that was almost like therapy. Dad and I don't work good together. There's a reason why I went on my own, and we get along. Dad and I get along. I love my dad, but it was good to sit down and almost hammer that out. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. there's so many that are. There was an 88-year, I think, was he 88 or 85-year-old guy that I just did this summer that he quit milking cows in 1992 and then bought beef cattle. And he has the coolest barn. The barn is, I mean, well over 100 years old, but it has like 3 rows of stalls. Like, the barn is tiny. It's only like 25 cow barn is all it ever was. But rather than you had 25 cows that went lengthways on the barn, they had like 3 rows the other way, and the barn cleaner made like a W in the barn. It was just cool as all get out. And I mean, this farm is neat as a pin. And he was showing me the cow yard. Like, he had concrete in this cow yard there was no mud anywhere because he had poured so much concrete over the years, and he was doing it like mixing in a 5-gallon bucket and carrying it out. And I mean, this guy had built this farm, like, he was 80-some years old, and I mean, just twisted up. But he still climbed 2 harvester silos that day. He closed one and climbed up and opened the other one in his 80s. He had an International 460 gas that had 30,000 hours on it.
Oh my gosh.
Smokes.
And it's like, you listen to a guy like that. I mean, in this farm, like I said, is neat as a pin. Like, he kept that, like, his life's work is that farm.
Yep.
And to show that, that's really cool. That,
That is cool. That's preserving.
I bet if you tore up that concrete in that cattle yard, you'd probably find hog panels and pieces of rebar and whatever he could find to tie that concrete together just to make ends meet.
Yep.
Well, and what's kind of sad, and is like, for the most part, that farm is worth a ton of money.
Yeah.
It's like literally 20-some miles from St. Paul, Minnesota, right?
Yep.
So there's somebody that would just have a lot of money that would buy that farm. A big crop farmer would run the land. That building site would end because, nobody's going to have a small herd of beef cows and run these beef cows into a tie-stall dairy barn and feed them, haylage like that and stuff. Like, nobody would appreciate that. And I think like there's going to be somebody for that farm, actually.
Sure.
But that's what happens too much is you just get wealthy people that just want to own this pretty farm, and then it's gone, it disappears, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
So that's one of my absolute, I don't know. There's a lot of them.
What about one that's coming up that you could tease? Do you got anything planned? We'll probably go record one in Tony's neighborhood on the way home. Yeah.
We've got a lot of them that I'm supposed to go do, but it's really hard to. It's a time commitment.
Do you try to set them up and go do multiple at a time, or?
We try to a certain extent, but it's hard. Like, I mean, it's a job to go record all these, and they pay, but I mean, enough. I don't know if it's enough or not, but I mean, it works.
Right.
I guess.
Right.
But I get emails all the time, people wanting me to come do more.
Yep.
Would you come do this with my dad? Because I've gotten that a lot where we've shot one, and then the guy's kids, especially, you'll get this old farmer that's really reluctant to talk.
Yep.
He just doesn't want to talk, and you twist his arm, and he does it, and then the kids reach out to you, and they're like, oh, my gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, because he doesn't think his story is anything special, and it's like, it was your life's work you put into this.
If nothing else, for the family.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
kind of like Vance Crow's legacy interviews, like whole farm
Right.
stuff, but this is specifically about tractors and the farm. Right?
I wish I had a video of my grandfather that I could. I have no video of my grandfather. I remember how he talked. I remember some of the stuff he did, but he's been gone since, well, at this point, I don't know, 28 years or something like that. And so for you to have that, sit down interview where you can, where he tells these stories. It's great, you know. And it surprises me though, like even sometimes I just cannot go record a story. I just don't have time, so I'll throw something together just off the farm with what I'm doing, a little bit of the history of my operation or that.
Yeah.
And those videos do well, like very well.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. We got the next issue of Heritage Iron magazine, that article is a really, really good one.
Oh, yeah.
I will tease that. The upcoming issue of Heritage Iron, that's a really good article.
So that'd be the February release?
Yep, they'll have it at Louisville.
Yep.
That'll be the issue at
We'll have to
Louisville.
pick it up there.
Yep. It's a long one, but it's
What color tractor?
it's a Magnum.
It's Magnum.
It's a Magnum. So
like it.
and I'm starting to write the next one now. It'll be another green one. I try and shake up the colors as much as I can, but realistically, 3/4 of the market was owned by green and red.
Right.
So you're never going to be able to just have this rotation where we go this color, this color, this color. We start back over.
Yeah.
You can't. You'll run out of colors.
Well, and just do go with the flow, right? Go
Yeah.
with what you find interesting. There's no roadmap to it. You didn't ever think you'd be writing stories about that for a magazine, probably?
No, I've always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
So this was when I got this, I'm like, this is that step to that.
Do you still want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Even the tractor stories from when I started to what they are now has dramatically changed.
Growth, right?
Yeah, because originally it was just, we'll talk about this tractor, and then the rest of it was kind of a footnote, and then you realize the tractor's just part of this that, and the comments I get are like, this really touches some of these people that grew up on a farm that, so.
Oh, I get it. Ryan, it's been cool watching you grow. I remember stepping out into my garage to talk to you one evening, and you were just getting on TikTok and asking us about the podcast. I think we were on the phone for an hour or 50 minutes or something like that. And now, I mean, shoot, you've grown this into a really cool thing, and telling people's stories. I mean, yeah, you're making some money while doing it, but like your passion bleeds through. And I appreciate that.
I just
so
love
much.
how real you are.
Yeah.
We talked for 2 hours last night, and right before this interview, you said, "So what are we even going to talk about?" We just talked the cameras died during this interview. Like we talked long enough for the cameras to die, and we didn't talk about any of this last night.
Right.
It's just real conversation you're presenting, and I love history. You're presenting agriculture history in a real form. It is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think that's also the reason why Tony has the following Tony does is because people can smell bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's why, I'll never be quite commercially. I'll never get as huge as some. Or why Tony could be a mega farm influencer, right?
Yeah.
He could be, but he can't. He's not going to walk that line that the, mega farm influencer might.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do think we need to kind of question some of the things we do in agriculture, because it's not.
Right.
It can't just continue on this trajectory forever, or so maybe it's good we question some things and look at some history.
I get it.
You
Dave,
know?
did you buy a farm?
Not yet.
Or sell one.
Getting close.
Ran off. I was either had to go to the bathroom
I
or
went-
there was an offer.
I went to the restroom.
Oh,
Although you want to know a fun fact? While I was looking at my phone when I went to the restroom,
what's that?
I just got prospected by a headhunter.
Oh,
You know what? For what job?
the Associate Director of Land of the President.
No, for a real estate sales job in Huxley, Iowa.
Oh,
Oh,
for
that's
your
so
own-
funny for your own company.
For my own company. The guy literally prospected me. I'm like, I'd love to set up an interview. And he's like, He's like, oh, I'll make that happen. I will call the owner and get back with him today. It's my freaking job listing, and the headhunter calls me to work at my own company.
Should take the interview. I bet you nail it.
I'm waiting to take the interview. He's supposed to call me back in 3 days. That just happened when I went to the bathroom. It was pretty funny.
That's funny. Well, this is always my role, and everybody hates me for it. But we got to wrap up. We got to get ready to go do the next couple of roundtables. It'll be fun because at least one of us gets to share the stage with you at 4.
Yeah.
So would be a lot of fun. We get to hang out with you here for the next couple of days. So
yeah.
Thanks for making us one of your priority stops.
Oh, absolutely.
Popping on and having a good time. Corey,
Yeah.
what do you tell the listeners?
Crack a cold one. You deserve it.